Mayor of Blackpool, Councillor Amy Cross.
I always love it when we have a technicality. Please be seated. Cheers, Mark. Thank you. Welcome everybody. Isn't it a lovely day? I think we've got another microphone on somewhere that's giving us some feedback. Can we turn those off, folks? That might help, and then people can hear. So we shall get on with it. So thank you, ladies and gents, for coming, councillors, for being present. There are members of the press here. Sheila's here this evening from the Gazette as well, taking photos on behalf of the Gazette. Welcome, Sheila. Can I just ask family if you can just wait until the end for photographs, and we can let people get out of the way, and then you can do whatever you so please, and I will stick around for those of you that would like photos with me, and if you want photos in the chamber, then we can arrange that afterwards as well, if that's helpful. So just to keep the meeting moving, if that's okay. So can I ask all councillors when speaking to turn on the microphones and be clear, just so that we can pick it up, because obviously we are going through a loop for people listening either online or in the room. So first of all, can I take any official apologies for absence? Nope. Okay, marvellous. Declarations of interest. That's good, we're on a roll. In which case, we will move to the agenda item, which is to award the Blackpool Medal. And this is not going to be time limited in terms of speeches, as it is a special meeting, just to make members aware. So in which case, we'll start with the late Councillor Peter Callow. Councillor Tony Williams, I believe you're due to move this.
I am. Thank you, Lady Mayor. It gives me great pleasure to propose this particular award to the memory of someone who did so much for Blackpool. Peter entered the world of politics in 1997 when he was elected to represent Norbreck Ward. Together with his wife, Councillor Mrs. Maxine Callow, they retained their seats in Norbreck year after year with an increasing share of resident votes. Not long after he was elected, he was chosen to be the leader of Council's Conservative group, and in 2007, he led the Tories to victory. It was such an overwhelming Conservative win in Blackpool that David Cameron interrupted his own schedule to come to Blackpool to congratulate Peter. As leader of the council, Peter made some daring and important decisions, not least the purchase of the Tower buildings and the Winter Gardens complex, ensuring they would belong to the people of Blackpool and our heritage forever. When it was reported that our famous 100-year-old tram service was under threat because of much-needed upgrades, Peter went against all the odds and persuaded the then Labour government to provide a massive £100 million in funding to save the tramway. Without Peter's persistence and negotiating skills, we may never have received this money, and there was a real and imminent danger at the time that our tram service would disappear forever. Thanks to his intervention, we now have a world-class modern coastal fleet and matching track. Peter was born in Blackpool and was a pupil at Revo School. One of his claims to fame was to tell everyone he played soccer with the great Jimmy Armfield. However, it was in the school team and not at Bloomfield Road. After an early distinguished spell in the Fleet Air Arm of the Royal Navy, and after a few changes in his personal career path, Peter eventually became a senior special investigator for the government, working undercover on various fraud cases all over the UK. He acquired skills that would allow him to be a good judge of character and the ability to choose the right person for the right job. And when retirement called, he decided he wanted to keep busy, and that's when he decided to become a local councillor. One of the highlights of Peter's career was when he became Mayor of Blackpool in 2015. This prestigious role had also been bestowed previously on Councillor Mrs. Maxine Callow in 2004, and their names will forever stay in the town's historic mayoral records, along with other important forefathers of the town, including William Cocker and Sir John Bickerstaff. The only downside to my proposal, Lady Mayor, is that I wish that Peter Callow was here to accept the medal himself. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Williams. And seconded, I believe we've got Councillor Lynn Williams.
Thank you, Lady Mayor. We disagree on many things across this chamber, but I think what we all accept is that although we might choose different ways of getting there, we all very much want the best for Blackpool. And nothing was truer of Peter than that. He loved Blackpool. He was very proud of being a third-generation Sangronim. And his public service as councillor, leader and mayor is testament to that. Councillor Williams has already mentioned the decision as leader in relation to the Tower, the Winter Gardens and also the tramway. I think he was no less proud of his successful campaign with Maxine in relation to the tram stop. It was during Peter's term as leader that the idea of the Blackpool Medal came about and was introduced. And in Peter's case, the acknowledgement of the service to the town and the affection with which he is held, as signified by the medal, is very justly deserved. So I'm very happy to second on behalf of the Labour administration. Thank you, Lady Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. At this point, I'd like to ask if any other councillors would like to speak. Councillor Martin Mitchell.
Thank you very much. I can't say I knew Peter as well as a lot of people did, but I can say he's very generous, he's very kind, he's very welcoming to me as a new member. Peter had that public spirit that I think we should all have. It's already been mentioned that he put aside party political differences in order to work with the Labour government, to purchase the Tower, the Winter Gardens, to secure the town's future. I just think he had that wonderful way about him of making people feel at home, of bridging the divide, of reconciling and making people feel more comfortable. He's Blackpool through and through. We all knew it, and we all appreciate everything he did for the town. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other councillors wishing to speak on this particular motion? No. Okay, that's fine. So we'll move then on to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you very much. I can confirm that is unanimous, as there was nobody else in the chamber that didn't hold their hand up. We like it when we have unanimous votes on things like this. So thank you everybody for that. I will ask if Maxine would like to come up with Nancy, I believe, to come and accept that on behalf of Peter.
Lady Mayor, councillors and invited guests. Could I first of all thank Councillor Tony Williams for proposing Peter. It was a lovely speech. I did appreciate it. Thank you, Tony. And also to Lynn for seconding. That was lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I would just like to thank all the staff here at the Town Hall this evening and all the past members of the staff that were all a great part of Peter's life. And also, of course, I'd just like to thank my daughter Nancy for all the support she's given me through the last couple of very difficult years. I couldn't have coped without her, and thank you very much. Thank you. I'd just like to say that, as Lynn has already touched on this, the Blackpool medal was actually an idea of Peter's when he was the leader of the council. He very much admired a young lady called Shelley Wood, who was a para-Olympics, and he used to see her going round the town on the roads, practicing very hard on her bicycle, and he admired her so much. And when she went to the Olympics and came back in glory, he thought, we can't just let this go. This is a Blackpool girl who's done so much for the town. So he had a word with the then chief exec, the late Steve Weaver, and said he'd thought of an idea of having a Blackpool medal for very special people who had served the town with distinction. So Steve Weaver said, that's a good idea. So Shelley came along to the town hall to receive the medal, and she was the first one. On Peter's journey in politics, it was quite a journey. And this evening, I'm absolutely delighted that we've got some of our very special friends here this evening who have been on that journey with Peter and I for over 40 years. I've got here a very good friend, Mary Metcalf, with her daughter Sarah. And Mary was involved with Peter and I in politics 40 odd years ago, and her lovely husband John. People may remember him. He was also a councillor and a county councillor, and very sadly John died a couple of months before Peter. But it is lovely to see Mary and her daughter Sarah here. And also part of this journey was Jill Brownhill, who's sitting at the back. Known Jill for over 40 years. She was very involved with politics and also with Peter and I, and it's lovely that she's here this evening. And also this evening, I've got Kay and Heap. Kay, who was at one time Kay Heap, who, of course, very sadly was married to Granville, who very sadly died quite some years ago. But it's lovely to see you, Kay, with your husband, Peter. Thank you very much for coming this evening. And also, I've got Pam here Pam Haslam, her and her late husband Alvar, at each election used to say, what can we do to help? They were the first ones to line up and say, what can we do to help? So I would just like to thank Pam very much indeed for all the work that she put in over the years. And also this evening, I've got Colin Howarth here. He was our beat manager in Norbreck and Ankersholm, and he supported us for very many years. He was the most fantastic beat manager, and I know I shouldn't say that, but he's the best we've ever had. If we ever had a problem on the ward and we phoned Colin up, he was there straight away. And in fact, every month he used to phone us and say, it's been very quiet. Have you no problems? Is there anything that I could do for you? The only sad thing, really, with Peter's political career was at the end of 40-odd years, he was no longer a member of the Conservative Party when he passed away. This wasn't anything to do with our doing. To this day, I still don't know really what happened, but then Peter and I decided to run as independents. And the lovely people of Norbreck voted for us, and we were there representing not just Norbreck Ward, but also this great town of ours. And as Tony has already said, and Lynn, Peter loved Blackpool. He was third generation, Sangronan, just as I was. The only disappointment was that Peter was working in London and we were living there for a short time, and our daughter was born in Essex. So, sorry Nancy.
I'm an Essex girl.
She's an Essex girl. But it is a very proud moment for me this evening. I would just like to thank everybody involved in this. It's been a lot of work for the staff and the Lady Mayor and all the councillors. But thank you very much. This is something that I will treasure, and one day Nancy will inherit it along with this lovely certificate. But if I tell you, when she actually inherits this, she doesn't like housework. So I don't know, she'll have to find somebody to dust it, along with our two mayoral portraits.
I need to find a cleaner.
But just thank you very much to everybody, to all the councillors who've been so kind and understanding over the last few years. I couldn't have got through without any of you, and the staff as well. I'm only sorry Yvonne's not here this evening, but I've heard that poor girl has got COVID. She found out today, so she's very disappointed, and I'm disappointed because I've known Yvonne a long time. But anyway, thank you very much to everybody, and congratulations to the other families who are here to receive the Blackpool medal on behalf of their relatives. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So Nancy's going to address us as well.
Hi, I'm hoping I've got this microphone switched on properly.
Indeed.
Yeah. So these are a few words that have come from Councillor Simon Blackburn about my father. Unfortunately, he can't be here today. He said, I would like to thank councillors for allowing Nancy to read this on my behalf. I've attempted to move heaven and earth to attend. However, this has proved impossible as it is regretful. Peter being awarded the Blackpool medal, which was his own creation, is serendipitous and heartbreaking at the same time. A staunch servant of the people of Norbreck and of Blackpool is an honour deserved many times over. Few people see behind the scenes of an organisation like ours. Fewer still understand the personal relationships and close ties which bind together those of us with a common aim, that of improving the lives of those who live and work here. In binary situations such as the Reds versus the Blue, we, ably supported by the media, seek to emphasise the difference between ourselves and the other team and invite the public to side with us against our opponents. It is impossible to know if there was any sense of irony intended by choosing today, a day of local elections in many parts of the UK, as a day on which we meet to pay tribute to our colleague. But it is through hope that there was, as I think Peter would think, it was amusing as well to do so. Peter, rather like myself, never set out to be the council leader. He sought to set out traditional Conservative values and hold them, the then dominant Labour Council, to account. He understood the nature of politics and the way in which national issues often dominate local politics when they shouldn't, and understand that we're all hostages to the fortunes of our leaders in Westminster. He accepted defeat with the same cheerful manner in which he welcomed victory, but never deviated from his values, even when they meant him leaving his political group to seek election as an independent, a brave move that was rightly rewarded by the good people of Norbrec. He recounted to me once the details of a meeting that he had with the then Secretary of State for Local Government, Eric, now Lord Pickles. To say that Peter was less than impressed would be an understatement. He'd gone to London to make the case for his beloved Blackpool and been very poorly treated. I shall not ask Nancy to read out Peter's assessment of Lord Pickles' character, but you can imagine, I'm sure. When Peter was mayor, we started having occasional meetings between the mayor and the two party leaders to try and deal with bits and pieces of business that we didn't want to get controversial at a later stage. This worked because of Peter's interest, inherent sense of fair play and willingness to listen and arbitrate. It set the scene for several years of similar meetings which lasted until relatively recently. The public will never know how hopeful they were in ensuring the smooth running of the town. In closing, I want to thank you again for your indulgence in listening to these reflections. I want to pay tribute to Maxine, who has borne the loss of Peter with stoicism and dignity, and whom I hope will continue to serve the people of the town for many years to come. I also want to thank Nancy for reading these words and for her kindness of friendship over the years. Councillors, there's been no more fitting a recipient of this award, and I thank you for supporting its award to Peter. Those words have come from Simon Blackburn.
Thank you, Nancy. Careful, it's all right, plenty of us have done it, love. None more so than me. So, you're an imminently prettier face than Councillor Blackburn, so it's nice to hear the words from you. Thank you both, Maxine and Nancy, for that. It is a pleasure to sit and serve in this council chamber, and some of us are lucky enough to come across people like Peter and Maxine on our journey in politics. And I would just like to say thank you to Maxine in particular for her bravery over the last few months in attending meetings and going to things that she didn't necessarily need to when she didn't have to, and for still continuing to serve the people of this town as she has done so well over the last many a decade. And we won't go there, shall we not, Maxine? We won't talk about people's ages and how long we've served, because one day you never know, somebody might do it to me. So thank you both for that. So we'll move on now to the Blackpool medal in terms of the unforgettable Councillor Lilly Henderson, MBE. So first of all, I'd like to invite Councillor Clapham to move the motion, if I may.
Thank you, Lady Mayor. I'm not under any pressure, really. David Henderson said to me...
Oh, have we got a mic?
Not working well.
Try the one next to you, John, and just point it.
It's all right, I'll speak then.
It's just for the loop. Nobody will hear you. So people will be looking at a blank screen, darling. There you go, John. Try that.
Are we on? Are we on? Paul, you won't mind. No, I was about to say I'm not under any pressure at all. David Henderson said to me earlier, Don, make this speech as long as possible. Someone else spoke to me previously and said you only need to say a few words. And as Lily was born on Halloween, I think I'm under more pressure because if I get it wrong, I will pay the price. So I'll just say it in my own way, and I hope you enjoy what I say. I've been fortunate to have known Lily for about 40 years within the Conservative Party. Lily worked hard all her life, even bringing up her sister's children when she suddenly died. Lily was from Sheffield, but throughout her career in Blackpool, fought to improve the lives of her residents. She was nationally recognised for her work with the Scouts and Guides and was awarded the MBE, a feat repeated by her daughter Victoria. Lily was an avid supporter of Blackpool FC, and I can remember going down there, I think on 3 occasions when I was mayor, and if you went into the corporate suite there were more pictures with Lily on than the Oystons and anyone else put together. And I really did wonder who was running the club and owned it. I'd have put my money on Lily. I'm not a gambler, but the power did seem to be with her. Very forceful woman, very kind woman, and absolutely fantastic to have as a friend. She was loyal. She'd support you right down the line. But if you were an enemy, you're on a no-hoper. She was fantastic. A lovely lady. Lily and her family supported me at numerous Sunday lunches. She came along. She paid for the whole family, the extended family. I never actually understood who was who and who belonged to who. And I've spoken to David about it, and I don't think he does either. And he's Lily's son, so I've no chance. But she paid for them all. She was very generous. They all enjoyed it, and she was great. And I do thank her for everything that she did in that way. It was one of the moves where Bispam had their Sunday lunches, and we did try and bring the North and the South together, which is very difficult. They are like two different tribes, and as a Yorkshireman, I don't understand any of them. But we did bring North and South together and enjoy the lunches, and they continue. Lily was the oldest candidate in the country at the last local elections and won. So that's how unique she was. She'd got determination in bucketfuls. Even though Lily suffered from failing eyesight and mobility, she continued her ward work from her home. She is the only councillor that I've known that has had the officers come into her house for meetings and not here. And I must thank the officers for their support for Lily over the last 2 years or more. You were really fantastic, and I'm sure she appreciates it all. I should imagine there'd be quite some relief when the door was opened and you could go home, and that would be down to Lily. Very, very strong character. She's fantastic. it is my official duty here, it's a pleasure and a privilege to support Lily Henderson, MBE, and that she is awarded the Blackpool Medal, and sadly, posthumously. I hope that more medals are actually given to people as recipients when they are alive. You know, that's the saddest thing about this. Anyway, that was my pleasure. That's how I'm saying it. It's not a long speech, not a short speech. It's somewhere in the middle. But I say it from my heart. Thank you.
I think that was about the perfect length, Councillor
Was it
Clapham.
perfect?
But what you didn't manage to do was turn your microphone after you finished. Almost 10 out of 10, Don. Almost. We nearly got there. Thank you for that. And I'm going to ask Councillor Hunter if he can second, please.
Thank you, Lady Mayor. I deem it a great privilege to be seconding this motion to award the Blackpool Medal to Councillor Lily Henderson, MBE. When I first became acquainted with Lily, I knew her going back many, many years because I've lived in Blackpool South Shore for about 30-odd years or so. She was a councillor for Squires Gate Ward and then later Highfield Ward, so she was one of my ward councillors long before I came onto the council. So I knew of Lily, and I'd met her a couple of times, but only in passing, and I was very, very impressed with her. But it was September 2013 when I came onto the council in a by-election and she came across and introduced herself to me, and from that time I think it's true to say she wasn't just a colleague, she was a great friend of mine, a very great friend of mine. I can honestly say throughout the time that we were fellow ward councillors, we got on like a house on fire. That's despite the fact that we came from different political backgrounds, although in truth, when it came to the crucial issues, we were completely in unison with one another. It was about service to the community, helping people, listening to people who've got problems, and trying to sort those problems out. I used to have regular meetings with Lily in her home, and she was a lovely lady. Easy to get on with. That's how I found Lily. You know, as I say, party politics didn't come into it. Her major passions, actually, were tennis, to enable children of all backgrounds to play tennis and that. And I'm proud to say I supported her in all her initiatives through the ward budget and things of that nature. And her other passion was the scouting movement. And it was through the scouting movement that she received the MBE, and quite rightly and deservedly so. But I did mention this after Lily had died, and there were the eulogies in this council, and that, albeit it was online at the time. She had some years previously, I believe, through the Conservative Party, been offered that award, and she actually rejected it because she felt that she shouldn't be awarded it, you know, for political activity. And it was only years later when she was actually pressured into accepting it for her work in the scouting movement, and only then accepted it because she saw it as an award to the movement as a whole. When Lily started to become more and more ill, it's true, as Councillor Clapham has just said, and I won't repeat everything, but it's true what Councillor Clapham said, that she never let go on her ward work. She continued on her ward work, and I mean, I can testify to this, walking length and breadth of my ward, I consider it my ward now, every day, you know, of the week, and that the people who were asking, how's Lily, how's Lily, how's Lily? And, you know, even when she became nearly housebound, she was still carrying on with the ward work. And sadly, she died in office, but then again, I think that's how she would have wanted to go, I think. So, can I say, it's with a heavy heart on the one hand, because Lily's not here to actually receive this in person, but I am proud to second this motion to give this Blackpool Medal to such a deserving and sweet lady. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunter. I'd like to ask if any other councillors would like to speak. Councillor Mitchell?
Thank you very much. I'll speak briefly. Again, a bit like Councillor Callow, I'm very much aware that many people knew Lily much better than I, but I'm very, very pleased that I did know her. Lily had fiercely held views which she was not afraid to express, and I indeed recall her doing that at my initial meeting. And yes, she expressed herself robustly, but then we got to know each other, and I learned, as everybody else already knew, that she had no devil about her. She had no personal antagonism. And one example that is to us all, and we should all follow that, but we don't always. It's always already been said that she was an enthusiast for youth and the Scout movement, an enthusiast for physical fitness, tennis, and she had so many pursuits, actually, and her personal contribution, I think, was an example to many, many people. So she lived a long and active life, and she was honoured by the people of the ward, who will be very, very pleased and proud to learn that this award has been awarded to Lily. I thank Lily for the tremendous contribution that she made.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Would any other councillors like to speak? Councillor Stansfield.
Thank you very much, Lady Mayor. I first met Lily around about 14 years of age, from 41 years ago. And if it hadn't have been for Lily, I wouldn't be here now. Lily had an amazing way of encouraging people and young people to get involved with, not necessarily with politics, but with the community, knowing full well that eventually it would lead to being in this council chamber. I'm not the only one that's standing here today that was one of Lily's protégés. I'm sure Councillor Cox would testify to that. It's the same as Peter. Peter was another one that, again, once someone had set you on the road, they would take you through the full journey. And it's absolutely delightful that someone who's so passionate for the town and so passionate for people to stand up for the feelings of the town and promote the town is getting honoured in this way. Thank you, Lady Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stansfield. Any other councillors wishing to speak on this particular motion? No? Okay. In which case we'll move on to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Marvellous, another unanimous vote. Thank you everybody for that. So in which case it just remains for me to ask David and Victoria to come up and receive it on behalf of Lily.
Lady Mayor, councillors, honoured guests, thank you very much indeed. This award is absolutely superb, as it is for Brian's family and for Peter's as well. And all three recipients are well deserved. There's no two ways about that. I'm not going to wax lyrical about Mum, and because the proposers and seconders and the supporters have spoken absolutely wonderful, and that says it all. So thank you very much indeed for that. What I will do is I'll give you a little bit of an insight, only a small insight, into Lily Henderson, the senior councillor, and Don has actually touched on this just a little bit. But when councillors achieve something, they quite rightly are proud of it, because as councillors, we're always told that we don't achieve a lot, and we're always told that we're useless, so on and so forth, and we have to take it. And when we've achieved something, it's really, really good that we get the praise for it. Mother's first wonderful achievement was being the Mayor of Blackpool, something that she really, really loved. And with that achievement came a very, very busy year, but also as Sheila can testify to from the Gazette, lots of pictures as well. Our mother was very clever in that as she was getting older, she used to blag me into going down to house on a Saturday morning, which I generally did. But when she was holding a surgery, she would get me to come down there. Well, David, you've got a bit of an insight into this. You've got a bit of an insight into that. And you can help me out on this, can't you? I go, yeah, all right, Mum, I'll be down there. So I'd be there, and I would open the door for whoever was coming in. Some wonderful, she used to call them the old ladies were coming. Well, she's 80 at that point, his mum, and these old ladies were 60. So the old lady would be shown into the lounge. And as you went into Mum's lounge, on the left-hand side of the wall was a lovely photograph of me, Mother in a Merrill, Granville, and his daughter. And you can't miss it as you go in. And people would go, oh, that's nice. And she'd be straight in. Oh, that was when I was the mayor of Blackpool. Oh, what an honour that was. Oh, and wasn't I busy? Oh, and this is my son, and he was the consort. And there's Granville, and he was the deputy mayor. And she'd have them straight away. That would be it. They'd more or less forget why they'd gone. So she'd be, and as soon as they walked past that one, Mum would then say to them, have a seat in the window. And as they turned round, you saw the photograph, the official photograph of Mum in the robes. And they go, oh, that's nice, isn't it? Yes, those are the official robes. And, oh, and she'd go on and wax lyrical about it. And then in the end, they'd go. But she did it to everyone. Everybody that walked in fell into the same trap. The next wonderful thing was when she achieved the MBE, of course. And it's quite right that she did refuse the first one for political things because she thought, no, that's a normal thing to do. But for a charity work with the Scouts, it was the right one. So when you walked into the room again on a Saturday morning, immediately in front of you, you'd see a picture of Mum with her MBE. But what she used to do was the mantelpiece that you had to walk past to go and sit down, the MBE was right there on the mantelpiece in the middle. And you couldn't miss it. And they go, ooh, and she'd say, yes, that's the MBE that was presented to me by the Queen. They did ask me who I would like to have it presented to me by. And I told them that when the Queen was doing it, I would go then. No disrespect to other members of the royal family, but that's what I want. And then as they turn round, looking at the MBE, picture, Lilly with the Queen being presented by the MBE. Oh, really? So that would be that one. Then when they were getting up to leave the room and turned around to the right, there would be another photograph of when we'd been to London, my wife Julia and I, my sister, with Lord Peter Blaker, who of course was the MP for Blackpool South. And they would go, oh, who's that? And she'd say, that's Lord Peter Blake. He's a family friend. And that's me and my family at the House of Lords for lunch after I'd received my MBE. Wonderful. The whole point being, ladies and gentlemen, is that this wonderful award, if Mum was still alive, the MBE gets slid to one side. The gong would be right in the middle, and the photographs that will be taken later will be placed strategically. She was very, very good at pushing the points over, and she would be absolutely amazed by this. So, Lady Mayor, councillors, honoured guests, thank you very much indeed.
As always, so ably done by David. I know, I'm sure. She sat you down for hours and made you practice, I can imagine it. So thank you for that, David, and thank you, Victoria. It's always nice to hear the family speak in that particular way. It's lovely to remember Lily in that way, and thank you for sharing those memories with us. We'll move on now to Brian London. Brian London is due to be awarded the medal posthumously as well, and I believe Councillor Tony Williams is going to propose.
Thank you, Lady Mayor. I'm extremely pleased to propose this honour in recognition, respect and gratitude to one of Blackpool's sporting greats, Brian London. Brian made his professional boxing debut in the 50s, and in 1958 he knocked out the talented Joe Erskine in the 8th round, a championship bout, and Brian was then crowned the British and Commonwealth champion, which was no mean feat. Brian London is the Blackpool Rock, as he was known, was an integral and active participant in the British boxing fraternity during the 50s and 60s, and during a long and mainly successful career lasting over a decade, he shared the ring with no less than 4 world champions. 4 world champions. Brian was never tolerant of officialdom, and at times he liked to sometimes go against the rulings of the various boxing associations, and often found himself in the naughty boy list. One particular infamous event cost him a hefty fine. It was the brawl in Porthcawl, and I'm sure his son will remember that or will be aware of it, when his European Champions fight against Dick Richardson was stopped after Brian was badly cut from a headbutt. The cornermen from both fighters' sides started fighting in the ring, as the crowd threw chairs and other furniture into the chaos. At one point, there were around 40 people scrapping inside the ring, and even Brian's dad, Jack, himself a former boxer, was involved. It was an interesting evening, but nothing to do with Brian. In '65, Brian defeated the blonde bombshell from London, Billy Walker, himself a fair boxer. That opened the door for Brian's most famous fight, a match against the world champion Muhammad Ali in 1966. Ali was at his peak, and Brian knew he might be outboxed, but he was determined to give it his best shot and vowed he would still be there thumping at the end of the fight. What Brian didn't realise, but discovered to his detriment, was just how fast Ali could punch. The fight only lasted 3 rounds, with Brian calling it a day. After the fight, Brian said, they told me he was fast, but they didn't tell me he was like bloody lightning. A phrase which has gone down in history. He further added, Ali isn't a puncher. He just hit me so many times, I didn't know where I was. I decided not to get knocked to bits and turned it in. Losing the fight was no disgrace. He had shown he had the courage to take on the best heavyweight boxer in the world. Many before him didn't even last 3 rounds. Brian continued to box and finally hung up his gloves in 1970 after a professional career which saw him fight at the very highest level of his chosen profession. Those of us of a certain age will remember the 007 Club on Tower Street. And as a musician, I was working most nights, and the natural route on the way home was to go to the 007 for a late drink. And Brian was always at the top of the stairs. And if you misbehaved, woe betide you. Because Brian's secret weapon was a punch to the stomach. And I've seen many a young winded lad on the floor outside. To those that knew him, and I had known Brian for well over 30 odd years, 40 years, we played 5-a-side together. I went with Brian on many boxing evenings where they showed old fights. And Brian always spoke very highly of Floyd Patterson, I think was one of his favourite boxers. And to those that knew him, he'll always be remembered with fondness and respect. And as a true ambassador for the town, Brian London, the Blackpool Rock, truly deserves to be part of our history and a recipient of the Blackpool Medal. Thank you, Lady Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Hunter, I believe you're seconding this.
Thank you, Lady Mayor. Can I say it's often the fate of people seconding a motion that many of the things they wanted to say have already been said by the mover. But can I say, I think the mover, the comments made by Tony across the chamber there, hit the mark exactly. And I would like to say that I fully agree with each and every one of them. And can I say what an honour and a privilege it is to be seconding this award to Brian this evening. If we go back to the 1950s, and I'm giving my age away a bit now, I was born in 1951, I can actually recall the day that Brian beat Joe Erskine for the British and Commonwealth. In fact, it was called the British and Empire title in those days. These days we call it the Commonwealth title because there isn't much empire left as such. But yes, I can actually remember that. I was 7 years old, so it's showing how old I am. And so still a couple of years before I moved to Blackpool in 1961. And I do also recall Brian putting up a valiant show against Floyd Patterson in Indianapolis, when I believe he was stopped in the 11th round, which actually is about 5 or 6 rounds more than Henry Cooper, 7 or 8 years later, when Patterson was an ex-champion, lasted with him. You also made reference to beating the blonde bomber, Billy Walker, who was tipped by many when he turned professional to be a world heavyweight champion, which never transpired. But there was also another leading contender at that particular time called Johnny Prescott from the Midlands. Now, as far as I'm concerned, Brian beat Johnny Prescott thoroughly. No two ways about it. What the referee was doing that particular day in raising the wrong hand, I don't know, because all the sports writers of this country said clearly Brian had won that fight. So can I say, before I moved to Blackpool as a child, and after I moved to Blackpool, as someone who used to read the American Ring magazine regularly, and boxing news in this country, and occasionally Boxing Illustrated, and that I was very keen on the sport in those days, amateur and professional, Brian London was right up there. And you associated Blackpool with him. It was part of the Blackpool scene, the Blackpool Rock, sometimes the Blackpool Tower, you know, but the Blackpool Rock mainly. So he was part of Blackpool, and Blackpool was part of him. And it's not just that. He was always proud to promote Blackpool and say where he came from. And another thing as well, some of us will remember back in the 60s when we used to have all the variety shows in town and that, and, you know, leading stars in the town. Often there'd be lots of charity events taking place in the town, like you know, celebrity football matches and things of that nature, sometimes at the Stanley Park Athletics Stadium, sometimes at the old Bloomfield Road and that. And I mean, some of these matches, some of those cricket matches as well, were like comic matches, if you know what I mean. It wasn't really a serious football game, but it took the shape of a football match. And I can distinctly remember one of these occasions where Brian was playing at Bloomfield Road in one of the teams, and during the course of the match, it was all a bit of fun, was this really. He had a little bit of an altercation with one of the showbiz stars and that over whether it should have been a free kick or it shouldn't have been a free kick. And to everyone's amusement, he quickly whipped off his tangerine shirt and adopted the boxing pose. You know, and everyone shouting, myself and my school friends, "Come on, Brian, clock him one," and that. Of course, he didn't do. It was all a bit of fun and that. But I give that as an example that Brian threw himself fully into the activities of Blackpool, in promoting Blackpool and that. And he was right up there amongst the leading heavyweights in the world for many, many years and that. And something that he did actually forget to mention, Tony, was that one of his fights against a former world heavyweight champion, the Swede Ingemar Johansson, which Brian lost on points, it was only because Johansson was saved by the bell in the last round as he was slumped hopelessly over the ropes. Had there been one more round, Brian would have beaten him. So he retired after a great career as a fighter and that. An honest person, forthright, courageous to the last. After that, well, there was a 007 club and that. He became a successful businessman in Blackpool, contributing to the economy of the town. And it became famous throughout the country, did the 007 Club in Topping Street. From start to finish, Brian was a Blackpool lad, as far as I'm concerned. He wasn't born in Blackpool. He didn't have the distinction of saying he was sand-grown, but then again, many of us don't. But sometimes where you're born is just an accident of birth. It's where you choose to live, where you choose to make your home. So, as far as I'm concerned, Brian was a sand-grown, and strictly speaking, he was. He was a true son of Blackpool. He loved Blackpool. He loved everything about it. He was proud of the town, just as much as the town is proud and honoured to give him this medal today. They were proud of him then, they're proud of him now, and will always be proud of him. And to me, it's such an honour and such a privilege to be seconding this motion to give this medal to such a worthy person. Thank you, Lady Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hunter. Do we have any other councillors wishing to speak? Councillor Mitchell?
Thank you very much. Once again, I'm outclassed in some respects, and I didn't know Brian at all well, but I did meet him, and he was very nice to me, and I understand that was his personality. I don't remember Brian's sporting career, but I do know he was a legendary figure, and it would be only appropriate for me as a councillor for Leighton over the last decade to say a few words, because he was, of course, much loved, and he was a very well-known local resident. He had a fierce commitment to physical fitness, and we would often see him in Stanley Park very, very, very often. And I do believe he kept very close to his fighting weight until quite near the end. And what an example that was to so many of us. People have spoken of how generous he was, how community-oriented, the charity work that he did, how well he got on with everybody. But it's not just that, it's his character. From what I've heard, he took nothing for granted. He got to where he was because of his endeavour. He had a hard life at times, as people of that generation did. He personified the grit and endeavour of his generation, and we're all very thankful for Brian's contribution.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillors wishing to speak? In which case, then we will vote on the motion. Please show of hands, all those in favour. Marvellous, that is definitely unanimous. Can we have some more council meetings like this where everybody's unanimous? It'd make my life a lot easier. In which case, I'd like to invite Jack to come up and receive this on behalf of Brian. I believe that, Jack, you want to come up? Come on.
Just like to say thank you on behalf of everybody for Brian and his family, young Jack, young Brian, and all his grandson, young Jack, who's going to be the next boxer. Who's training now. He could be a future champion. No pressure. No pressure there. Yeah. There you go.
I'd just like to say thank you for this award for my granddad, and hope to be the next boxer, next British champion, punch a few people, see how I do.
Thank you very much, and good luck to Jack on his future career, and I'm sure Grandad will be very proud of you. So, thank you everybody for your patience in getting through some of those things, and thank you for allowing family and friends to be able to speak. I know it's very important to people to do that, and also it's quite difficult to speak in this room. Some of us take it for granted, this room that we meet in all the time, but actually it's a very daunting room to speak in. So well done to all of those people that have spoken on behalf of the family, and congratulations for those families that have received those awards on behalf of their family members that have passed away. It's always nice to be able to remember them. If any of you would like to stay for photos, you are more than welcome to do so. What I would also like to say is any family members or those that have proposed and seconded motions today on behalf of those people are invited into the Mayor's Parlour afterwards for a brew and a cake, which is only appropriate. And it's one of the first ones we've done since COVID, so please do take advantage. Thank you, everybody.